In time for Kpop Demon Hunters Mania, a major Korean art show lands in the U.S. A new Smithsonian exhibition draws from a vast Korean collection to tell the story of the country's visual culture. Curators are expecting a large and young crowd. On a weekday afternoon this fall, the largest museum in South Korea looked as if it were preparing for a K-pop concert. Outside, a maze of crowd control barriers had been installed. A sign at the gift shop warned of high visitor traffic. And no, another sign asserted, the shop no longer has the merch they know you came to buy. If buildings could talk, this museum would be asking you to chill. This year, the National Museum of Korea has seen more than 5 million visitors, a record-breaking figure that places it near the Met and the British Museum. The influx has been attributed in part to the soaring popularity of Kpop Demon Hunters, a movie about an evil-fighting girl group that is rich with references to Korean visual culture, including a dim-witted creature named Derpy, who is based on a folk art tiger. Again, his souvenir pin is sold out. Now, the National Museum of Korea is sharing some of that love with DC as one of the primary lending institutions in the largest exhibition of Korean art in the Smithsonian National Museum of Asian Arts History. The show, Korean Treasures, Collected, Cherished, Shared, opened Saturday following a delayed start due to the government shutdown, and includes more than 200 works and a dozen national treasures, making strides in museum representation for Korea, which has long been treated as a centerpiece to better endowed collections of Japanese and Chinese art in Western museums. Chase F. Robinson, the museum's director, called it the biggest thing that's going to happen this decade in Korean art history in North America. The Museum of Asian Art expects the show to not only be popular, but to skew quite young, Robinson said, noting that the institution has boosted its Korean programming in recent years. We're as enthusiastic and fanboyish or fangirlish as anyone else is with Korean popular culture, he said. But also it's important that we understand, our audience understands, the deep wellsprings of creativity in Korean culture. Korean culture has permeated nearly every aspect of life. K-pop's earworms have wheedled their way into our heads. K-dramas have flooded streaming services. K-food has sold out at grocery stores. K-beauty products crowd shelves at makeup stores. The phenomenon is often dubbed the Korean wave. The Ma exhibition both rides and cuts deeper than the trends, showing the visual world of a country that went from shunning outsiders, it was once referred to as the Hermit Kingdom, to accruing enviable soft power on the global stage. Here, Korean culture is no wave, it simply flows. You do walk around with a really strong sense not only of the extraordinary traditions of what I'll call pre-modern Korean arts, but also a discernibly Korean trajectory of modernism, said Robinson, describing the show as capacious. Lim Kim, a professor of Korean art history at Dartmouth College, sees the rise of K-culture as part of a larger story. Chinoiserie popularized Chinese visual culture in 18th century Europe, and Edo period woodblock prints spread Japanese aesthetics to the West, influencing Impressionism and Art Nouveau. It is not an isolated trend, she said, but the latest chapter in the centuries-long dialogue between East Asia and the world. For Kim, who years ago did her PhD under a Chinese art professor because no one at her university taught Korean art, the Smithsonian exhibition marks a vital chapter. The show reflects a decisive shift from viewing Korean art as a regional adjunct to China and Japan toward recognizing it as an autonomous and essential voice within world art history, she said. The exhibition draws from the collection of Lee Kun-hee, the late controversy-ensnared Samsung chairman, who was an avid art collector. During his life, Lee was convicted of bribery and tax evasion, and a Samsung warehouse holding art was even raided as part of an investigation. He was later pardoned in both cases. After Lee died in 2020, his family, facing the largest estate tax bill in South Korean history, gifted more than 23,000 works amassed by Lee and his equally art-obsessed father, Samsung founder Lee Byung-chul, to several Korean museums. The collection has played an important role in constructing a continuous art historical narrative in a country fragmented both by Japanese colonialism and the Korean War. Lee Byung-chul sought to re-establish the Korean identity, said Kim, while his son, Lee Kun-hee, worked to expand the collection, uniting the classical and the contemporary. Seo-yin Lee, Lee Kun-hee's daughter, and the president of strategic planning at Samsung C&T, told the Post that her father turned to art to gain insights into life and leadership. She recalls coming home from school to find him sitting with an open box of ceramics, studying each one carefully. He saw art as a cultural asset, and one he believed was essential to a nation's future competitiveness, she said. If popular culture has introduced Korea's creative energy to the world, this exhibition reveals the delicacy, depth, and distinctly Korean view of humanity and nature that lie beneath it, she said. Some have criticized the gift for reflecting the Samsung family's seemingly vast influence over South Korean society, as the country's infamous chaebols, family-run conglomerates, are known to have. But it's also driven crowds. In 2022, during the closing weekend of an exhibition of works from the collection in Seoul, the average wait for entry was 4 hours, Art News reported. Sung-moo Hwang, NA's inaugural curator of Korean art, described Lee's taste as wide and broad. Works in the show stretch hundreds of years from Korea's Three Kingdoms period, a roughly 700-year era that ended in the 7th century AD, to the 20th century. There are challenges to building a show around a collection. It can be uneven in quality, not comprehensive, and risk feeling too much like a story about a collector. So curators sought to find stories you can relate to across time, said Hwang, pointing to a piece of calligraphy describing the pain of losing a son. So it's not just about Korean art, but trying to understand the lives of Koreans. Then there are the parts that are just fun. A lion-shaped drum, rich with color and personality, is likely to remind knowing viewers of Derpy, Hwang said. She thinks it'll be a hit. J. Keith Wilson, curator of ancient Chinese art at the museum, who worked on the show, said they chose to tell the story through themes, rather than, say, chronologically. Sometimes, I've thought of our presentation as almost like a series of boutiques, he said.